Hi everyone, I'm Steve Main, back here with our weekly interview with Dr. Nario of Biointegrative Health Center. As some of you may know, I'm in the health club business, and I've been in the health club business all my life, owning multiple health clubs. And so we're going to talk about protein today. And I come from more of a fitness type background, and so this is going to be one of my favorite topics. It's on protein. So, Dr. Nario, Biointegrative Health Center, Reno, Nevada. You can check them out online. Welcome, Doctor.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for the invite again.
Okay, so we're going to talk about protein today. And, off camera, we started talking about it a little bit. And all the different types of protein and how is it absorbable and all that stuff. So give us your first thoughts on protein. I know you and I talk about many different diets, from keto to paleo to the Mediterranean diet, which is all fun stuff for me. But protein, what are your initial thoughts that you would just tell us about protein?
Well, Steve, I know this is something that is very close to your heart. That's why we definitely want to address so many things for the audience about this. And of course, we all like protein to build muscle, especially when you're an athlete. You're so consumed by protein. And it's all about the macros, as they call it. I hear this from the people who I go to the gym with. And we like our chicken, like breast, thigh steaks as sources. But to be more specific about protein, protein is actually a macronutrient. And essential functions of protein is not only focusing on the muscle, there's more to it than just muscle building. And this is also related to tissue repair, hormone regulation, facilitation of enzymes and processes in our bodies, and even transportation of molecules such as oxygen. And there are two sources that, in general, that we can consider where protein is coming from. One is plant and one is animal. And these proteins are consisting of amino acids, which are what we call the building blocks. And protein sources vary in amounts of amino acids that they contain. And that's why there's another classification that you can think about, such as protein can also be classified as complete and incomplete. So complete protein contains all the 9 essential amino acids that the body cannot create. And incomplete protein lacks the 9 essential amino acids. Now, don't need to memorize this, what I'm going to tell you. And this is kind of a tongue twister. And I'm sure, Steve, you know this: the isoleucine, histidine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and even valine. All right, I'm out of breath. But those are the 9 amino acids that we consider essential. To make it simple, animal source, usually they are the ones that are considered complete protein, and plant-based proteins are the incomplete proteins, with the exception of soy, such as in edamame, tempeh, or tofu. And some examples, common examples of complete proteins, we all know this: beef, chicken, dairy, fish. And examples of incomplete proteins include beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, and peas. Highest protein foods are usually considered to be in the animal-based classification because they all have the essential amino acids. However, plant-based foods are not nutritionally inferior, though they have lower protein, but they are richer in the other health-promoting dietary components such as fiber, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals versus animal-based sources.
Yeah, it's just a fascinating topic, and we can get into more about. I'm a big fan of the animal-based protein. The vegan protein, like pea protein. I use it, and I train hard, but I spike it with leucine, which makes it more absorbable. Leucine is one of the branched chain aminos you mentioned right off the bat: leucine, isoleucine, and valine, but leucine is 2 to 1 over the other 2. don't want to get you confused here. Not you, Doc, our listeners. If you spike it, whatever type of protein you're taking, it's going to be more absorbable. So you can get the benefit of what you just mentioned as far as all the different other nutrients in a plant-based protein and get it to be more absorbable, because it's not as absorbable because of the amino acid profile. But anyway, so tell us a little bit about the significance, or the good, the bad, the ugly, of eating animal-based type protein.
Right. Well, Steve, that was an awesome hack that you just mentioned. Yeah, I hope the viewers who are very in tuned with protein applies that. Well, going back to your question, animal protein, well, research actually has demonstrated that consumption of red meat, particularly processed, all right? I want you to underline the word processed meat, is associated with increased risk of total and all-cause risk of illness. And this is important to highlight for the reason that processed meat is the most prominent one in the commercial market. We're talking about fast food, easy food for access. So this is different when I talk about farm-raised game meat. And it's more important to highlight that consumers don't consider quality or livestock management practices of the meat that they consume. So due to modern agricultural practices and high demand of animal protein, such as livestock raised in North America, where we are, and is fed in grain rations and raised in industrial feedlots instead of on nutrient-rich pastures, plays a big factor in the quality of meat that we get. As a result, feedlot meat is often nutritionally inferior to grass-fed, organically raised meat. And meat from grass-fed beef, which is organically raised, contains greater amounts of heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids and a lower ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid than feedlot meat. So a high ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid, which is common in diets rich in processed food, leads to actually a low-grade inflammation, oxidative stress, impaired functioning of the lining of our blood vessels, and hardening of the arteries. Most common issue here is it's way more expensive if you buy quality meat. And it's hard on the pockets, right? But it's actually better for your health. So that's what the dilemma is, and I hope our viewers can discern that.
Well, you know, that's a really good point that you make about the protein, and people don't know this. You go to the grocery store, right? Quick Mart or whatever you want to call it, and you grab the meat off the shelf. That has a completely different profile than, for instance, I eat chicken and I eat beef, but yeah, it's expensive because it's grass-fed, it's organic. It has, like you mentioned, I'm glad you brought that up, it has a different profile, which completely changes, wouldn't you say, completely changes how it's going to react in your body. With the omega-3 and omega-6, that's the big one right there, and it changes that profile.
Yep.
So plant-based, you know, I also use plant-based protein powders, again, organic and all that. So it's the same thing. You know, I don't want to take or eat garbage plant-based protein either, but some of these plant-based proteins have a pretty good amino acid profile. I've studied them, I've researched them. Some of them have a really good amino acid profile, and a lot of them you can see right on the container what the amino acid profile is. And by mixing and matching a lot of these things, they can get it close to animal-based protein, but it's plant-based. So you take your little leucine, spike it with that, that little hack will help it. So what do you think about plant-based protein, Doc?
Right. Well, the whole plant-based idea is actually linked to many positive health benefits, Steve. It's associated with the reduction of anything that would cause illness to the system, especially cardiovascular disease, mortality, and when you compare it to, of course, animal protein. Also, modestly, there's a 3% increase in energy from plant-based protein per day, and a reduction of risk from illness by 5% versus, of course, animal protein. This suggests that diets based on plant proteins versus animal-based protein may even promote longevity. And going green is not a bad idea if you think about this concept. Let me address the issue also about our obsession for protein intake, which leads to the overconsumption of sometimes animal protein for muscle building. Even on a plant-based diet or the plant-based protein, this still meets the RDA, or required dietary allowance. And even if we eat plant-based proteins, and we should not be worried about muscle shrinkage and muscle building if we're taking plant-based sources. One proven problem in the American diet that everybody has to be aware of is not the lack of protein, it's the lack of fiber. And it leads to constipation and a lot of gut issues. And that's a whole new topic that we should discuss in another session. But if possible, consume more of whole food containing meals featuring various high protein plant-based foods such as beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And consumer demand for plant-based meat alternatives, I have to emphasize this, has increased recently. However, I warn the public, many of these alternatives are processed very highly and may be containing high sodium and high saturated fats. Keep in mind that many of these alternative meats are not nutritionally equivalent to actual meat, as they may lack in certain nutrients such as vitamin B12, iron, and zinc.
Well, being in the business myself of, fitness, you hear a lot of debate on whether being vegan is stupid. Can you really get enough protein? And you can, but do some vegans get enough? Some don't. I mean, even if you're not vegan, you got to pay attention, because you may not, it's hard to know where your protein is. So you got to pay attention to it either way. But being vegan, is it easy to get adequate amounts of protein? Talk to us a little bit about, is it dangerous to be vegan? Can you get enough protein being vegan? I think I know the answer to this, but go ahead and explain it.
Right. Well, Steve, yeah, that is a big, dilemma for our audience. But it is possible to obtain enough protein from plant-based foods. However, we need to pay close attention to our diet to ensure consumption of adequate protein is ensured. Most people tend to consume more than the required daily allowance, or RDA, of protein per day, regardless of whatever they adhere to. May it be a vegetarian, meaning veggies mixed with dairy or even eggs, or fish, or even being an omnivorous diet. Depending on the dietary habits and the physical activity of the person, we may need to consume slightly more proteins beyond the RDA to make up for the lower digestibility and absorption of plant-based protein. So this is where plant-based proteins kind of slow down versus animal protein. And the differences in digestibility and between plant and animal protein are very small, but we have to consider this fact though. Certain food preparations or techniques such as boiling, soaking, sprouting, and fermenting can improve the digestion of plant-based proteins. So don't be biting through that raw kidney bean unless you really want to lose your teeth. But the point there is there are some advantages and disadvantages, and this is where plant-based protein kind of lags in. And many vegans eat soy-based products, and majority of the soybeans grown in North America, unfortunately, are genetically modified and grown with the use of potentially harmful pesticides and herbicides. So it's best to choose certified organic soy-based products such as tofu, tempeh, and even soy milk.
So, it's just such a fascinating topic. And, I eat a broad range of proteins, all different kinds, but I've done vegan. I did vegan for a couple months and it worked pretty well for me. I mean, I don't want to say I was surprised, but My deal is, where should my carbohydrates be? But I've done vegan. I did vegan for 2 months, and it worked out pretty well for me. So if someone wants to be a vegan, which a lot of people are, and some people really recommend it, and some people feel great on it, what should they do if they want to ensure? Do you have any tips for people that they want to ensure that they're getting, the right amount of protein and the right kind of protein, and enough of those essential amino acids? Because that's a key. You hit on it earlier. Amino acids do everything in your body, basically. Enzymes, well, enzymes do everything, right?
Right.
And if you don't have the right essential amino acids for your body to make the enzymes and the different protein chains that it wants, you're at a disadvantage. So do you have any tips to ensure that someone who wants to be a vegan, long term, can really get adequate protein and be as healthy? I know you can do this, but be as healthy as someone who eats other types of protein.
Yep. Yeah, well, Steve, in our practice, as I always see vegans, I always tell them that vegans are not the healthiest. I have vegans who has cardiovascular conditions. The thing here is, when you do vegan, you have to make sure there is a medical professional guiding you through this, for the reason that we actually order blood tests to see nutritional deficiencies in these specific types of diets. That's why being guided by your doctor through being a vegan or vegetarian is a necessity. And again, here in our practice, we assist our athletes, for example, healthy patients, or even sick ones, such as cancer patients or losing muscle. We provide IV amino acid infusions, oral supplementations through pills, capsules, and shakes. But again, it's all about, doing a blood test and assessing the patient. But again, let me not only isolating the vegans, but in general, I want to make a recommendations for protein intake for vegans, non-vegans, and carnivores. In general, protein needs are varying in every body. In your activity level, body size, and life stage, they're very dependent on. And RDA for protein is actually 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for the average person. And this is a minimally active adult. While adults who has increased activity levels may require up to 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram per day. So if you're the ones who really want to compute that, that's your guide right there. When you're choosing your meat, poultry or fish, opt for high quality options when possible. Whenever possible, here are tips for choosing high quality animal protein. So write this down. Avoiding processed and deep fried meats, the deli meats, bacons, pepperoni, hot dogs, chicken nuggets, cross that out. Choosing certified organic meat. So look at the front labels. You would see all of that green sign right there. Look for grass-fed or pasture-raised products. Look for unprocessed, nitrite-free, and low-sodium products. Purchase locally raised meat and poultry from farmers or farms that actually are known to produce this. And you can refer to the Environmental Working Group's Consumer Guide to Seafood for safe and sustainable seafood options. So there's a website for that, because we're worried about, of course, the heavy metals that are contained in these seafood sources that we get. Overall, vegan, non-vegan, we all can live healthy lives. And we just must optimize our diet by combining high quality meat, poultry, and seafood with an abundance of fiber-rich foods that we always forget, such as non-starchy vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, dark leafy greens, fruits, and whole grains. And the lesson here is combining animal and plant-based diets and proteins are always essential, and everybody is individualized in terms of their intake of protein. But I would always suggest there should be a predominance of more of the plant-based sources.
And I like I said, I'm not a vegan, but I did it for 2 months and I felt pretty good. But I was getting a lot, because you said I'm pretty active. I lift weights. Over 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That's more protein than people think, and that's not easy to get if you're focused on that. So I have to say, when I did vegan, I was getting a lot of protein. I was probably getting, it was all plant-based, but it was probably 150 grams of protein a day, which would line me right up with that 2 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Kilogram, yeah.
Great topic, and works for me. I mean, I don't do it very much, but we thank you, doctor. This is a great topic. Dr. Nario, Biointegrative Health Center. Also, before I forget, that amino acid drip, I do that every other week.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's a vitamin bag and amino acid drip, and that's an awesome drip. I highly recommend it, even though I'm not the doctor. But anyway, thank you, Dr. Nario, Biointegrative Health Center in Reno, Nevada. You can check them out online, see what different types of services they have, and great place. So thank you, doctor.
Thank you, Steve. As we all know, the knowledge is power, and thank you for letting me provide you with the edge in longevity and health maintenance, which I call the biological edge or the bio edge.